Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Where we take a look at these markets, we do it from a neoclassical perspective, each time asking ourselves just that one question: what happened today, and what might it tell us about the coming ones? Do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube. It's under the channel, L.A. Little. If you want to subscribe, just reach up there in the right-hand corner. Subscribe. Anytime content's pushed, you'll get a notification. It's an easy way to stay up with what's going on. As far as what's going on, you got to say this is, again, one of those markets that just doesn't want to give it up. NDX actually changed its trend today. That's probably the big event today. NDX up 0.5%. It led the way. NASDAQ, the broad NASDAQ composite, about 1/3. S&P broke even. Russell just broke even as well, and the Dow was up slightly as well. So you really didn't get a lot of push, but you did not get that selling after options expiration. I'm sure the bulls are going to be emboldened by that, and they're going to try to take it higher as a result. We'll look at the index here in a second. Looking elsewhere overseas, you actually had a test failure on the CACs, over, back under. It's a test failure at the highs. DAX not the case. Gold sells off today, and that was about it. So pretty much flat across Asia. If we go to the NDX, NDX gets over the swing point high. And so if we draw it up here and take a look at it, you see the swing point high here. You just get over it tonight, and it looked like it was going to fail, but it actually got over it and stayed over it. So you get a trend transition, right? So you're going to go from negative to sideways. And so that's going to say, hey, this thing can, try to work its way up to the next area. That next area is this bar. And you've actually got, and I've got to go back and check the numbers, but you've actually got a bearish retest regen going on the daily and on the weekly. If we pull the weekly over, we can see it here. And I'm not sure if the daily lines up the same. But this is the bearish retest that's going on. It's doing a test of that area. At top is 4467, and you got the 4462. So this is the test, right? This is the test to try to say, that on a weekly basis, on an intermediate term time frame, right? It's no longer this, but it's instead that, and that's a big thing if it can do it and hold it. Now, usually what you want to see is you want to see it hold it for a bar. So you want to see it get over it, right? Stay over it this week, and then you want to see it stay up there one more week. And that would give you a pretty good indication that, in fact, you really have that trend transition taking place. As of tonight, you actually do have a trend transition to the sideways position on the daily. The weekly, different story. So we'll have to see how that plays out. If you flip over to the Russell, now the Russell is weaker. Has been. So you got the strongest NDX, you got the weakest on the Russell, and actually was the Dow, but it's pretty much the Russell now. You tested into this kind of a small breakdown bar from last week. 1169 was the top. You get over it, back under it, and actually you got to it, back under it. This thing's struggling to get higher, and so Russell still can't get up and over and hold price. Walk over and look at the S&P 500. The S&P, now it also looked like it was going to do an over and under, but it pulls it out by just a few pennies. Yesterday's high 2033.54. It closes 2033.66. So you get about 12 cents on there, enough to keep it up there. Volume tails off. This thing's struggling at these highs. It actually went up and tested into this bar tonight. That number was 2034.08, so that's that overlap area. Actually, it's congruent. The bottom of this one's 2035.73, and again, you close at 2033.66. So the top 34.08 to top today 34.45. You go over it, back under it. That's doing some sort of a test failure there, if you want to read it that way. And you can read it that way, and probably should read it that way, right? Because this is an important test, right? This is your breakdown bar, just as this was, right? These are the two breakdown bars. You come back up to that area, you test over it, back underneath it. That's saying, hey, I don't have the juice, right, to get back up over this thing. I certainly don't have anything like the volumes that I had as I spilled on the way down. So, if I look at it, yeah, the NDX is carrying this thing higher. Is it going to be able to keep going? It really looks like it's struggling to do so, and it looks like these are going to pull it back as a result. If we look overseas, I talked about that the German DAX wasn't able to get over, but you had a failure on the CACs. Other than that, nothing happened overseas. If you look internally at the internals to this market in terms of the sectors, looking at the strong indexes, right, the SOX, remember the SOX has been the strongest one, was the strongest one last week. SOX goes over the bar from 2 days back under it, right? It's just hanging up there. It's testing into this high is what it's doing, 88.60. So you go over it, you back underneath it. Same thing on this one, 88.70. 88.78 was the high today. So you go over them, back underneath them. You're failing at those highs. And you don't have that much volume up there, but you don't have enough to get over it. This is going to try to pull back. And so that's one of your strongest pieces of this market. When we're looking at it, in terms of the NDX, it's about a third of the NDX. The other one's biotech. Biotech had a big push today and was helping it out. And then you had the Apple, Microsoft, and Google. Now you've got Google reporting earnings this week. Apple is next week, and I think Microsoft is next week as well. So the big three are going to report fairly soon. And, Apple is the one that carries the weight. What Apple wants to do is probably going to be a lot about what this market wants to do. If we pull Apple up, let me grab that chart and see what it looks like, if I can type it in right. Okay, here we go. So Apple just sideways, right? Flat as can be, flat as a pancake. If you look at the, what's happening here is you just kind of got this range going on. And, yeah, really, that's the range. And so Apple's sitting in the middle of the range coming into earnings. That means you can spike it up to here and, try to take out these highs. You got 3 of them sitting up there and then another one over here. Or you can spike it down here. So, you can argue either way on Apple. Now, I know everybody has, expectations that Apple's going to do well, and it probably will do well, but is it good enough for whatever this market expects of it? And I don't know that answer. So Apple's going to be a big tell next week. Let's take a look at the other ones here while we're here. Let's see what Google looks like. So Google's got earnings coming out this week. I think it's on Thursday. And it's been making that run. And it's got an ABCD structure to the upside. Now remember, Google had nice earnings last time, and now it's making a run back up to that top in front of these earnings. And so here was the spike up on earnings last time, and now you're making the run back up there. And boy, this certainly looks like it's going to test right to it in time for earnings. So Google certainly helping out. And Microsoft, let's see what that one looks like. And Microsoft, yeah, kind of the same picture. It's got a nice little run going too, and it had a decent bump last time on earnings too, I think. If I remember right, I believe it was this one. So, big range. And, Microsoft's just messing around. So, that's the big three. Not much else to say there. You got one other big thing this week is central bank, England. You got the numbers on Thursday morning, I believe, and that'll be right before our bell. I don't know if they've got a conference going with it. They usually do, so that will probably be a big thing coming up this week. There's not a lot to talk about. The question is, will this market be able to somehow stretch higher or not? And, in my opinion, it's about as stretch as it can get. And if I take a look at one more piece of the puzzle here, and that is the dollar. The dollar had a little bounce up. Now, there's no volume associated with it, and it already had a big run down, so you're just getting a bounce out of it. So when we're talking about Europe and we're talking about, the potential for maybe something to happen there, if I look over the dollar actually looks like, Europe's not going to do anything. But then if I go over and I look at gold, and so let me pull up the gold chart. If I look at gold, gold's pulling back. Let me grab gold just a second. So gold is actually pulling back and coming back with light volume into a bullish retest regenerate on the daily. Now on the weekly it's a little different, right, because it went up and tested this and failed. I had decent volume up there, 44.5 over here, 40 over there, but it failed. So, gold is arguing against the idea that England will do nothing. But then again, it doesn't look like the dollar's got any strength to it, so that seems to suggest that the European Union isn't going to do anything this time around. Probably what they do is nothing, and they talk a good show again, which is common for Draghi. Okay, so for tomorrow and for the rest of the week, right now it looks to me like this market's trying to roll. It looks, if I had to place a bet on it, my bias would be to the downside slightly. But you don't have any real good indications because you have the NDX still pushing highs and not giving it up, whereas you have failure on the S&P 500 coming into that big breakdown bar. So you got one up, one down. Which one do you believe? It's a toss-up. I suspect that means we're going to go sideways with maybe a slight bias to the downside because I think the S&P will win out because we're stretched in general. That's it for tonight. Have a great one. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Tell a friend. Tell two. I'm L.A. This is and was your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night, and I'll see you next time. Good night.